Keep seeing my friends, all of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Doug. That was read more beautifully from your mouth than from my eyes just hearing it in my head. Those were words from the Science of Mind text of Ernest Holmes, speaking of the two great commandments. And it's a very powerful testimony to an idea that we're going to talk about together today. And it's about the urge to serve. And before I begin that, I wanted to welcome our guest musician over here. She has a beautiful display of her work out there in the foyer. So thank you for being here. We'll be listening to her music. Is it Kalyani? And she has, her music will be at the 10:30 service, so if you want to enjoy that. So thank you for being here today. Appreciate that. So this urge to serve, this is what we talk about. This is what Seva is. And we don't often describe, or we don't often go back to explaining, well, Seva is that selfless service to God. It's doing your work with only the divine in mind. And I often have spoken to that in other talks, and it comes, that whole spiritual concept comes from the Bhagavad Gita, from when Krishna, who was the mystic, the wise one, the idea, the Christ, knowing, the wisdom, was speaking to the seeker, Arjuna, of this quality of how to do your work in this world. And it is to do your work without wanting to reap the rewards of your service. And so I have studied that concept for a lifetime. And I wanted to share, before I begin my talk, this small story from Anthony DeMello. And I'll explain why as I conclude the talk. This is the story of the temple bells. The temple was built on an island, and it held 1,000 bells. Bells big and small, fashioned by the finest craftsmen in the world. When the wind blew or a storm raged, all the bells would peal out in a symphony that would send the heart of the hearer into rapture. But over the centuries, the island sank into the sea, and with it the temple bells. An ancient legend said that the bells continued to peal out ceaselessly and could be heard by anyone who would listen. Inspired by this legend, a young man traveled thousands of miles determined to hear those bells. He sat for days on the shore facing the vanished island and listened with all his might. But all he could hear was the sound of the sea. He made every effort to block it out, but to no avail. The sound of the sea seemed to flood the world. He kept at his task for weeks. Each time he got so disheartened, he would listen to the village pundits who spoke with such unction of the mysterious legend. Then his heart would be aflame, only to become discouraged again when the weeks of further effort yielded no results. Finally, he decided to give up that attempt. Perhaps he was not destined to hear those bells. Perhaps the legend was not true. It was his final day, and he went to the shore to say goodbye to the sea and the sky and the wind and the coconut trees. He laid on the sand and for the first time listened to the sound of the sea. Soon he was so lost in the sound that he was barely conscious of himself. So deep was that silence that the sound produced. In the depths of that silence, he heard it. The tinkle of a tiny bell, followed by another and another and another. And soon, every one of the 1,000 temple bells was pealing out in harmony, and his heart was wrapped in joyous ecstasy. So why do I share that story? It's because of all my years of studying about Seva and sacred service. It wasn't until this weekend that I heard the bells of the truth of what that really means. And I have a friend, and I'm going to share pieces of her journal with you. I have her permission to do that. But it's about really knowing the heart of that level of service, of your work in this world. And when you get it at this level, you will hear the sacred bells of that one calling you, that all of your gifts are done for that one knowing of love for the divine. So that really moves my heart, moves my intention even deeper in this world. And I think sometimes that I'm caught in moments of deep and pure service. And then I also watch the what do they call it in the Bhagavad Gita, the flickerings of the mind, when I'm also going, why did I get myself into this? This is not much fun. And I was doing, one particular episode for me was at work, I was doing a particular cardiac study on a patient. And I brought him up on his wheelchair with his oxygen. He was running out of oxygen, so I was, making sure that our tanks would help support his tank so he could get home, and his wife was with us. And we made it through the study, and then he said, I'd like to go to the cafeteria. And I said, oh, I'll take you down there in the wheelchair. And he goes, oh, that would be really nice. And I thought, yeah, it would be nice. I started feeling, kind of full of yourself when you're going to do something nice for somebody and there's no strings attached, so I was feeling really pure. But he goes, I need to stop by the lobby. My friends are down there. I'm going to meet them too. And I said, well, no problem, so we'll go down there first. And then, notice at our hospital, the cafeteria is way away from everything else. So I went down to the lobby and he goes, oh, he doesn't have a leg. And I'm going, oh, you've got to be kidding. He doesn't have a leg? I said, well, how's this going to work? You're in a wheelchair. I can't push two people. And he goes, oh, no, it'll be okay. He's got a wooden leg, and that's what he called it. And so I said, okay, well, here we go. So here's this, we found the people, and we start going down. Well, the other gentleman walked very slow because his leg was healing, and his wife was on oxygen. So here we're going. And I'm thinking, boy, I didn't mean to get into this much. Okay, by the time, it took about 20 minutes to wheel all of this entourage. They were all following me. And I get down to the cafeteria, and there's no tables. So I'm going, okay, well, I'm going to push you in here, and you get what you want, and I'll go sit at a table for you all. And so everybody's coming in. What are you doing down here, Sue? Just sitting? And I said, oh, yeah. Just waiting, hoping I don't get paged for the next one. And then I wave to the people, and they come, and then all of this gets settled. It's a long, boring story shorter. They sit down, and they go, aren't you going to join us? Gotta be kidding. I'm done with this service. I said, and I went and I found some auxiliary people. I said, look, these people need help getting back to the lobby. And I left it at that. But I was thinking, it started off, doesn't some of our ideas of what we want to do for someone else start off that innocent? And then it becomes a little bit more of a little chaos. But it all worked out. But this friend of mine that I want to share a story with you, and part of my reason for sharing it is to help dispel the fear of Ebola. And this is a story about my friend, Dr. Shannon Moore. Mentioned to you, those of you that know me, I've mentioned her before. She's a dear friend, and she's a servant to the world in her work as a physician. So I start this with a quote from Mother Teresa: "There is a light in this world, a healing spirit, more powerful than any darkness we may encounter. We sometimes lose sight of this force when there is a suffering, when there's too much pain. Then suddenly the Spirit will emerge through the lives of ordinary people who hear a call, and they answer in extraordinary ways." Monday, November 24th. This is the first day in the Ebola training unit office where they're all being oriented. And my friend just arrives there. This is in Liberia. She said first story she hears was 3 women beaten and robbed on the beach, 2 doctors and a nurse. One doc that was there limping and hunched around, being very stoic, it seemed, she said. The nurse so traumatized that she refused to discuss anything about the experience. Now, this is my friend Shannon. I guess the good news is that they're on their tail end of their time here, so they'll get help as they need it. November 25th, today we travel to Bong to join a class of 25 to train at and I'm calling it an ETU, that means the Ebola training unit. The training with 2 young nurses on my team, one from Kenya, one from Uganda. We travel by car, and it's driven by a Liberian. And she starts to describe how they continue to have a sense of, she said it kind of hurt her heart, but a little bit of a slave mentality, because everything she was referred to as anyone in authority was boss. And she said it didn't feel comfortable at all to be referred to as that. But after 5 hours of driving on this road, it rained big time overnight, so I suppose the roads were worse than normal. One Ebola body seen en route was there all day. I know this because every group who arrived after us saw it, and it looked like it wasn't fresh. When someone dies, the people bring the body to the road for pickup, but there is no family, no one who will advocate for the quick pickup. It may be days lying on the road. The viral load is the absolute highest at the time of death, correlates the highest risk of infection for others. So folks are reasonably frightened now of doing anything with a dead body. The burial teams run by the Ministry of Health will eventually come. Spray the chlorine everywhere, bag them, spray again, bag again, spray again, wrap them, and take them to either cremation or burial ground. So culturally, burial is very highly ritualistic there, and it has been very destructive, arousing anger in the communities when the government started ordering cremation to try to contain the outbreak. As the situation was calmed down and there's more education, there has been some resumption of burials, however, not the way they used to be. If a person dies in a treatment unit in a city, they'll be cremated in the countryside, buried, but on site, not in a home village, which would have been normal. So she says the training people were fabulous folks. They're smart, brave, flexible. Several are in Africa for the first time working. Sort of hard to imagine your first mission being an Ebola mission. All the organizations come together, and their work is done in a jungle. She says, I went to a case where they discussed the case of a young woman, her name Victoria, not the patient. So I think they've come to really care for her, and they have flummoxed about what they could do. Well, there's lots they could do if they'd be willing to treat based on known medical knowledge instead of following the World Health Organization protocol. But they don't deviate from it, even when they all acknowledge it would be better if they did, and this is so difficult for her. So watch this space of serving in the world, and then we watch the flickerings of her mind. When we watch where we come with such pure intention, and yet we got an idea of how it would be better, or how we could put our opinion on it, and it taints the purity of the moment. And so she says, she went on to describe her living quarters. The bedrooms are hot. They're plastic mattresses with polyester sheets. So thank goodness I have 2 pieces of African cloth to use, one to wrap myself after the cold showers because there's no hot water, and one to settle under the net. Wednesday, the 26th, listening to God music this morning. Started the day off with birds. And she started to describe then giving the information of how meticulous it was. How meticulous. Now think about this. We're sitting in our part of our world wondering about this fear of the Ebola. And here are a group of people dedicated to go right to the heart of the source and to begin to care for the whole world by caring for it right where it is. So she said meticulous procedures for donning and doffing, which means putting on and taking off the required outfits for this. So she said there's black boots, scrubs, hazmat suits, 3 pairs of gloves, a plastic apron, hood, 2 masks. You are sweating before you even have half the stuff on, and then you go into a tent where there's no air, no breeze. Just about everyone has to work up to the 2 hours. That's the standard time in the suits to care for the patients. I was probably dressed about 20 minutes, and in that time I needed to say to myself, you can breathe. You're breathing. You're okay. I'm okay. I felt suddenly weakish and fainty. There are folks who do the faint thing, but we're told that we should be aware of our physicality, since if you're starting to feel bad, it is another 15 or so minute process to remove all the layers in a safe way. The worst events that seem to happen is when people's masks get so wet they feel they are suffocating. That is always a scary thing, not being able to breathe. If you touch your face, your mask, or goggles after being in the confirmed ward versus the suspect ward where they're being tested and waiting, you're told to leave immediately so you can take the precautions for potential exposure. There's no scratching your nose, no moving hair out of your eyes. If the sweat gets in your eyes, tough luck. And then they say if a fly gets in your goggle, and if that bothers you, and she said, excuse me, if that bothers me, well, then you can go out and get redressed after the 10 minutes doffing process. Meantime, the fly buzzes around in your mask. So she continues on. I won't be reading all of these things, but I love how she progresses. So there's the drama of doffing and donning these outfits to be safe with this. And she said, Thanksgiving Day, I woke up feeling thankful. Sleeping pretty well off and on now with my favorite plastic mattress. Mosquitoes are few. I'm grateful for that. Electricity consistent. The fan is a lifesaver. There's lots to be grateful for. And then there's the green textures, the sounds of the morning, the cold morning shower, instant coffee and powdered milk. It's all good. She gives great respect to a teacher named Elvis, a brilliant man, definitely experienced in medical stuff, wearing a shirt printed with the U.S. Marine Iraq on it. I wouldn't be surprised. He was top-notch. So she starts to appreciate this idea. Can you imagine when you start to really live this world? She began to expand her heart into remembering how laborious it is to move air in and out with the duckbill mask, when all it's getting moist and it feels tight and she feels like she can't breathe. She's on the very edge of that sense of panic, and she said it's very uncomfortable. So the gift in this, to experience a taste of those who suffer from COPD, asthma, congestive heart failure, all who struggle to move your air in and out. We take our ease so much for granted. So I continue in this journal, she's continuing to witness that state. She's doing this for the God. She's doing this for that deeper purpose for humanity at large. She reminds herself it's not a joy ride for her. She feels anxious and needs to calm herself a bit inside. She uses a centering prayer and focuses on her breathing. And then something shifts. That's what I love this, as she puts God first. Something shifts and it feels that my breathing's getting easier, and it helps if I move to a section of shade out of the hot sun. I ask if they have, and I feel like I'm going to faint chair inside the unit, and there are chairs there, but somehow they expect us to predict our faint experience 15 minutes in the future. So we have time to get doffed for the event and having time to supervene that experience. She said, don't get me wrong, I suspect this boiling frog process will work. There isn't much fainting reported. They gradually extend our time, so by the time we are actually in the hot zone, we can tolerate 2 hours. So far, I'm into 30 minutes. So in this whole process, this idea of working with the Ebola virus and the cleaning with chlorine has become incredibly healing, and they have been able to wipe out many of the cases. She speaks of the people there. She says she's in a mix of Americans, Kenyans, Ugandans, Liberians, one from the Congo, and a Canadian. Again, this idea of this global world coming together. This isn't just one person from the United States. There's so many there that are working on behalf, and this is the pure seva of the heart. She says, I'll finish for today and see if I can get this sent. Grateful and joyful for the opportunity to learn what love is and how to be it. She speaks of the wash teams where there's about 100 people in the wash team, and all they do is help to get your clothes off of you, and they work the water sanitation and continue to keep the hygiene at its peak of exactness in everything that they do. She said, you come through the gates and we're required to go into the changing rooms to get out of the street clothes into the scrubs and the rubber boots. There are a couple of generators on site with washing machines to disinfect the massive use of scrubs. There's about 50 patients in every unit. She described in another passage where the patients are sometimes 2 to 3 to one bed. And there's the testing stations because of some work from the Navy. The Navy was able to provide a testing where it could only take 4 hours and you would know whether you were positive or negative for the Ebola virus, where before it was 5 days. So you'd be tested and you'd just have to stay with all these other people whether you really had it or not. And so she just said she was so grateful for her gratitude, just kept pouring out through each of these writings. And as she spoke of the beauty that she kept seeing even through all of this, there's beauty everywhere, the tenderness of the teams, the dedication of those who monitor the hand washing, the boot dipping, those who bring food, those who are problem solving and needing a creative ideas. Even the patients care for one another when they can. There's an open window for the confirmed patients to engage with the psychosocial team. It's set up far enough away that you can be seen, but there's no risk of contamination. After not seeing another human being, what a joy to see a healthy human 8 feet away, who can throw fresh trousers or a tea bag or a banana or a coloring book. Inside the confirmed ward, a child's ball was resting against the wall, and resting on it was a rhinoceros beetle, radiantly iridescent, the size of a small mouse, shockingly beautiful. She quotes, "May we know and live into the love of our God and God's people. May we rise into this morning and claim the knowing, the beauty that compassion wins." My friend is Episcopalian, and she speaks several times in this writing the idea of when they meet each other, may peace be with you. There is that turning to each other and shaking the hands, but there's no touching hands. And she relates in such a beautiful way this idea, it became eye to eye, soul to soul, may peace be with you. It became deeper and more real. And she said it didn't matter if you didn't understand the language. You could understand the prayers of the heart and the community of love. And in the process, through her journey there, she witnessed healing. She witnessed the containment. She witnessed the closing down of these units. And she's home now. She's home now, but she has been blessed in this journey. And she ends her letter, she said, "Thank you for your faithful prayers and support. I can't tell you the number of times I have humbly and gratefully thought of you here. On more than one occasion, I've been happy to share with the church folk here. Our church folk are praying daily for them, so our world is praying for this. And for this community of people that are suffering in the intensity of this." She says, "The home I find in the global Episcopalian community is a great joy when I travel. No matter what language, I can recognize the cadence and tone of Our Father in the Creed. The order of the service is everywhere the same. I've been reflecting on passing the peace when the handshaking is not allowed. I found it incredibly moving as it seemed people compensated by soul gazing, manifesting a radiance from way down deep. It's remarkable, moving. Humans are such wonderful inventions, aren't they?" So breathe in and breathe out. The prayer of St. Teresa of Avila, "Let nothing trouble you. Let nothing frighten you. All is fleeting. God alone is unchanging. Patience obtains everything. Who possesses God wants nothing, for God alone suffices." Good Lord, how I wish that prayer were true. It's very hard to see and believe this here at times. So my friend is home. And she said, while it continues in some places to continue to rage, the cases are diminishing rapidly. So let us know that your prayers here, your prayers that are on this side of not being afraid that, oh God, there's a case in our country. It can be contained. It can be touched with just regular household bleach. So it's not to be cocky about it, but it is to open ourselves into recognizing she believes, and I confirm that belief, that it has brought awareness to our country and it has brought people together. in a way that only when you serve from that depth of your being, when you serve from that place of uniting yourself with the divine, when you do as the scriptures ask us to do, is to love God but love your fellow man and be of service from your heart in any way that you can to serve that fellow man. Those are the two great commandments that Ernest Holmes reminds us and points to in the end of his writing. And that idea, I'll be talking at the 10:30 service a lot about Ram Dass. I've been studying him these past few weeks, and he's so incredibly honest and raw and funny in his delivery of what true seva is. And in particular, he was sharing these moments when we are asked to give of ourselves, and yet the flickerings of our mind cause us to have angst about what we're doing. How did we get here? And why aren't they doing it the way I think they should do it? And he reminds us, as his guru had told him, you tell the truth, you love everyone, and you serve everyone. When Charlie and I first started visiting different ashrams, the idea of love all, serve all was very prominently placed everywhere. And we bring that back to our sanctuary here. Love all, serve all. In the Joyous Living Journal, service is a generous way to live. It requires you giving of yourself to another or to a situation, yet is part of your soul's purpose to live in service. Gandhi says the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. You do it because you are the hands of God. There is this inner urge to serve. It is the practicing of sacred service to another. Raghuur is a mystic, Indian mystic, and he says, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. Albert Schweitzer says, I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, the only one among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. This is about connection to all beings, to all of life, to act from a place of love, to center yourself in that oneness with all. So, my friends, this urge to serve. Just allow yourself to center in that place as you witness your life's work, your life's calling. How has that been for you? And you want to notice the moments that you're in that complaint place, that place where it doesn't feel very joyous. And as the Ram Dass's Maharishi told him, put love first. It doesn't mean you need to be a doormat to the experience, but it means to look deeper. There's a beautiful book out right now called The Untethered Soul, and I read that over the holidays, and it keeps inviting us. So this is where the bells begin to tinkle, because it invites us to keep going into that witness state, keep going beyond the complaints, beyond the flickerings of the mind, into that one place where you're the steady flame, where you're united with that one. And that oneness allows you to see with eyes of love, and then you offer your service from that place. It's such a holy place, and I know so many of you here, it just moves me. You know, I see Kim in the kitchen week after week, and Carolyn, and setting up the social hall ready to serve you, and we just are sometimes bumping our way in to get the first bowl of whatever it is, but it's like, oh my God, these people spent this time. And I know Charlie, you know, it's like I see the nightlight go on and I'm going, oh God, it's only 4:30. And he goes, I'm going to go down to the church and set it up. And I'm going, oh boy, he's just calling. All of you that serve here, every single one of you that show up for classes, that show up to sit in meditation, to do spiritual practice, to work the landscape, to touch this place, to touch these sacred grounds, to clean, to vacuum. There's wax on the back floor. And whatever it is, whatever you find your calling, It's right there. It stirs inside of you. There's an urge. There's an urge inside of you. And as you open the container of your being, and you allow yourself to stay in that witness state, to stay so deeply aligned, so in union with that one self, that divine self, it's just an outpouring of joy. So join me in a knowing. Oh, as the bells tinkle, as we get that idea, as we don't just focus on what's before us, we recognize the great divine, the divine. We allow our hearts to fill with this love. And we feel this moment, this holy moment, there's no separation. That this union is so absolute. That we have put God first, and in that union, our heart is open. And when our heart is open, our eyes are open to the humanity and to the great love that is just vibrating at the core of all that there is. And that vibration calls us in deeper to be of service, to serve from the hands and the heart of our own deep divine self, to touch the suffering in this world, to bring healing, to bring peace, just to be with no agenda, with no flickering of the mind. Feel that as your own container just opens and you bring it all in. And you just are in that place of hearing God's music in every call, beckoning you, calling you home to your true place. I give thanks for each and every one of you here that can hear that call, that urge to serve. And let this year of 2015, let it be the year you awaken every day and remember who you are. I give thanks for this moment, for you. And so it is.
To love, serve.